Almost there. Right. Well, what I'm going to do tonight is I am going to have an overlook of cover stitch, and I am going to just go through the main points of it and where you can go wrong with it, because I think that's a big deal. Why is my cover stitch not working? And it's just normally a couple of things. So I thought we'd have a look at that. If you haven't got cover stitch, have a look and see what it does, see if it's for you. I actually love cover stitch, and I'll explain why as we go on. So I do have a slideshow, but it's only about 4 slides, and the rest I'm going to demo and talk through. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to put there we go. I've put my slide up and it says cover stitch and my top tips. Okay, and I will come back and check for questions after I've done the slides. So what is cover stitch, I should say? It's basically 2 rows of straight stitch with a sort of zigzaggy section on the back, and it is often used for hemming. And it can be, you've got 3 cover stitch needles, so it can be a wide cover stitch, or a left narrow, or a right narrow, or it can just be one needle and be a chain stitch. Okay, so that's basically what it is. It's not a huge number of different things like the serger is, but it does quite a few things. So the cover stitch is mainly used for hemming. And why would I use cover stitch to hem? Well, you get that nice straight couple of straight rows like a twin needle. It's what manufacturers use a lot for hemming. And as much as it's great on wovens, it's super good on knits because we can use that fabulous differential feed that we only have on these machines, the big differential feed. So what makes it great, it has a little give in it. I mean, some people say it stretches, it pushes me to say that. I say it gives a little. Okay, so you can use it to hem knits and wovens. But the greatest thing about cover stitch is all of the numerous great attachments that work with it. Now, I'm not going to feature them all tonight. Um, there's a belt binder, and I think I have a belt binder sample to show you. There's also a corded pin tuck, which is pretty cool. And then we have the fellers and the downturn fellers. And they create hems. They can fold it twice or they can fold it once. You have the knit woven binder, and so it goes on. There are so many. So here is the knit woven binder. This is the double fold bias binder, knit woven double fold bias binder. And I use it to do my t-shirt necks. I use it to do bias cut necks, where I've cut the strip on the bias on a woven. And actually in that picture, I've got the underside is the decorative section. And I even use that particular binder to bind a really big quilt. So numerous uses. And chain stitch is just where we use one needle. And what we have to remember with that is it does not stretch. Okay, it does not stretch. So I think that's all the slides I want to show you. So I'm going to take that out and I am going to have a look at the machine. So I'm going to put that in. I'm getting a dab hand with this system now. So another thing that I didn't actually put in that slideshow, and that slideshow printout is in my group, Deb Canham Surger Sanity Projects. I'll put the name up, and it is ready for you to print out if you want to. And I will put it. I haven't put it in yet, so I will. But one thing I want to say about um, cover stitch is I use triple cover when I use all 3 needles, and I gather with it. And I absolutely love the perfection of the gathers in that. Can you see how nicely it came out? The turquoise spot. And that pink is just where I put the decorative thread in the chain looper. But see how pretty that is? Now, what you have to remember when you gather with triple cover stitch is you can't pull it up tighter. What you get is what you're going to get. So that's often overlooked, and it is one of my favorite ways to gather, gather. Anyway, so on the machine, I am set up for cover stitch narrow using chain stitch 1 and 2. And there's two major things you have to remember when you do chain stitch. And the first one, and the big one, and the one that you will all make an error of at least once, is remembering to put your knife down if you have a combo machine. Otherwise, you're going to slice through your project. Never happened to me, of course. And the other thing is, whoops, you have to make sure that your upper looper is down or your cover stitch table will not go on there. Now, you know how I'm always mentioning that hole there that's visible when you use the knife table? See how it's covered with chain stitch and cover stitch? So you can actually sew anywhere where you can fit in. You don't have to sew on the edge and you don't have to sew on a fold. And I have just threaded up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to start. But first of all, I want to show you that my chain looper thread is in that little hidey box there, and it's very happy. You don't have to pull it out. And before I start stitching, let me just show you a few things. This is the triple belt binder, and I use this to make straps sometimes. So, to be honest, I've never made any belt loops, but if I was going to, I would use the belt loop binder. But it makes straps, and you can weave these together to make a nice project. Here I have where I put a zipper in using narrow cover stitch. It's a heavyweight zipper, and I just thought it went in better with cover stitch than any other way. It's actually very pretty. I really like it. Here is a decorative chain stitch where I've just used one needle, and I put the decorative thread in the chain looper. So I do use that a lot for my projects, like my coat, my big coat. That's all quilted using this stitch and these heavy threads. And I think it's very, very pretty. It's almost like couching. And then here I have a woven hem, and you can see I've covered the raw edge of the hem as I've sewn. Okay, now I do that with woven, but I don't do that with knit. So there you are. That's that. So let me just get my notes out so I don't mention anything. And I'm going to give you tip one. Tip one is, let me read it and then I'll know. Tip one is always sew into fabric when you first thread up, because that's how you create your stitch. You can't just hit the foot pedal and get a stitch. You have to sew into fabric. And I move my stitch length to 4. And the reason for that is that if I have it on 4, I can create a thread chain. So I have my fabric here. I'm going to put it under the needles and I am going to stitch. And I've come to the end of my fabric and I'm just going to stitch off, and that is going to give me a thread chain. Okay, that is on stitch length 4. Sometimes you can get it on another stitch length, but it's almost guaranteed on a 4. If you have trouble with it, then move your stitch length to 4. So that was tip 1, create a thread chain. Now, why do I want a thread chain, you might say? Right, let's talk about how easy it is for cover stitch to come undone. Well, it's quite funny, really, because if you want to actually undo cover stitch, it's not as easy as you think it is, okay? But here I have, let me see if I can get you a little bit near it. Here I have my cover stitch, and say I've messed up and I want to undo it. What you do is you go to the right side and you undo 4 stitches, straight stitches. But this is the significant point. It's no good me undoing the first 4 stitches I sewed. It has to be where I came off. So I'm going to undo 4 straight stitches on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so that will have released my threads on the back, and see, it just comes undone like that. So that's how you undo cover stitch. Doesn't always go that well. It depends on your fabric sometimes. But that's the idea, that if you cut 4 straight stitches, pull on the back of the chain cover stitch and it will undo, but it only undoes from where you come off. Okay, if you do it the other end, it won't go. So that is a problem for some people. They don't like the fact that, let me just say, right, so I'm trying to do it in order. Right, what if I stitch something and somebody says to me, oh, when I try and take my stitching off the machine, it's kind of tight. Okay, so if that is a problem, this is what you do. You make sure your foot is up, and then you just ease these threads, your needle threads, and it will come out more easily. Okay, so there you are. You're not going to pull all your threads to pieces by taking it out. So that is that. How to release it. We're also going to do it in the round. Right. So let me just say this too. I'm going to stitch again because I don't have a thread chain at the moment. So I'm going to stitch a thread chain again. Okay, that thread chain is locking on those stitches. So it's not so easy for them to come undone. However, I haven't got any stitches up here, but now I've created a thread chain. Can you see that I can start up here, stitch off down here, and I have a thread chain at the start and the end, and that is going to lock my stitches. Now, of course, if I cut it, it's at risk of coming off, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to fold that over and do a hem or something, and you'll secure it. So always think about locking your stitches on at the start and finish with a thread chain that you have created on stitch length 4. Okay, so let's have a look at cover stitch in the round. Now, the only thing I haven't mentioned here, oh, I thought I'd press myself a hem and I haven't. Let me just make myself a round. Um, the other thing to say about cover stitch is you always need to use um, the needles that are designated for your machine. Now, for the Triumph, and most of the baby locks, it is ELX 705CF, and the same can be said for the Benina L890. It uses the same needle. Now, you can use any needle you like on the serger side, but if you're having problems with your stitch, then I recommend you change your cover and chain stitch to an ELX 705. Right, I'm just going to turn up this hem. I thought I'd pressed it, but I haven't. Okay, so I've made my little round hem and I'm going to sew inside the round. So, and I'm going to sew from the right side. So I've turned it so the right side is inside the circle. Always easier to sew in a circle. Now, I have myself a little problem now because I have a thread chain on there and it's not going to allow me to put that needle where I want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ease that thread a bit. Take my needles out of the machine. And that's just going to give me some leeway to get this hem up here. And I'm working on a knit, so there's two things I need to bear in mind. One, I should be using ELX 705 SUK needles. They're recommended for knits. And the other thing is, I'm not actually planning on sewing on the very edge where I cover the raw edge like I do on wovens, because that's going to put one needle in a single layer and another needle in a double layer, and that could give me a problem. This isn't going to fray. So if that excess fabric sticking above my stitch line is annoying, I will cut it off. But I probably won't be annoyed by it because I take the easy way whenever I can. Right, so I'm going to line it up with something that are guides and things that you can get that are really super. And because I'm sewing on a knit, I'm going to use my 1.3 differential feed, okay? because that's why I love these machines for knits, because I have that superior differential feed. And I'm just going to go around, and I'm using my regular foot. You can use your chain cover foot. And I'm just going around this round, and I'm using this little line here as my guide. I'm not entirely sure I folded it up accurately, but and I've actually just noticed I've got a needle unthreaded. So let me just thread that and continue. Right. I'm just going to ignore it and carry on. So what I'm doing is I'm going all the way around. And what I'm going to do before I get to the initial stitches is I'm going to cut the stitches because I don't want those threads to get tied in with my stitch. So I'm carrying on. And this is where people have trouble getting off the machine. So I can see that my stitches, I've actually lost my thread there, but we'll ignore that. I've got stitches here. My needles are the first and second notch. So I'm going to line those up with my stitches. And I'm just going to keep coming and stitch over by about 3 stitches. And then I want to come off the machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my needles. I'm going to raise my foot. That opens up all my tension discs. I'm going to bring the slack out above the needles, okay? And then I'm going to slide my Allen key on top of the fabric, but under the foot. And that's going to pick up that slack thread and bring it out to the front. And then I'm just going to cut it, and I'm just going to swish back. And what that will do is it will take all my threads to the back. Now I'm still got one thread attached. That is the chain looper thread that was never involved in the process of bringing the threads forward. It was only the needles. And then I'm just going to tie that off. And then that's going to secure that thread because that's where I came off. This is my vulnerable spot. So I want to secure my thread. Otherwise, there's a slight risk it could come undone. Okay, so I've tied a double knot in it. Now I'm going to trim it. And that is dealt with. And I've gone all the way around. Okay, that's when my thread broke. It wouldn't be alive if something didn't go wrong. But you see how easy it is to come off if you do it correctly. So that was that tip. And I think I've covered everything else that's in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back round, and I know there'll be questions. So I'm going to come back to me. So I'm going to remove that. Okay, here's a question. I know on knits you want to cover stitch on the hem and trim if you want. Is that the same for wovens? And can you sew with one needle on the hem and the other above it off the hem? Hope this makes sense. Totally, Diane. That's what I'm saying. On knits, you really want to have both needles on the hem. Okay. Otherwise, you can have trouble. But with wovens, it's not such an issue. So on a woven, I will cover the hem because it's not that hard to do and the machine has no trouble doing it. So I'm going to hold that up. Can you see how I've covered the hem on that one? This is a woven, okay, but I don't do it on a knit. Not to say you can't, but if you have trouble, it's because it's on 2 different levels. So let me have a look. Let's take that one out. And how do you know where a place, whoops, how do you know where to place your hem so that the edge is covered? Align the left needle with the edge. Okay, let me show you. I'm going to put you back on the machine. So add to stream. Right, so say I was doing this hem. This is the woven. What I would do is, you're sewing from this side, so you can't actually see the hem, can you? So what I always do is I go to the wrong side, I line up my needles, and I see if there's a really good place on the machine to guide me. Now, actually, there is here. It's this little white crack here, but equally, you can get a hem guide. And then, of course, I have to turn it that way, and I'm blind to where the edge of the hem is. So you have to have folded it up well. But I knew it was on that ledge, and I'm going to follow my notches and I'm going to stitch. Okay, so that's that one. Whoops. Do you remove the cover stitch project the same way on the Bernina L890? Yes, absolutely. Right. Is the placement on the hem of knits to avoid tunneling? Yes, it is. It just, you're asking a lot to have it stitching on two different things. Actually, on the Bernina L890, you have something called the compensation foot, which will help you with that. But we don't have it on the baby locks. So, whoops. Sorry, my phone's on do not disturb, but of course there's an alarm. Help, where do I put it? Okay, where can I get ELX 705 SUK? I use Schmidt's and they don't have those. Okay, let me put that up. Right, where can I get ELX 705 SUK? I use Schmidt's and they don't have those. Your local quilt shop should have them. Your baby lock dealer should have them. Last resort, you've got Amazon, but you have options, it's just a question of looking for them. I agree, they're not as easy to find. I agree. Um, so here is one from Patty. She says, I prefer to use the ruler. It helps me sew straight. Yeah, and you know something, I'm sure it's in my drawer here, so let me just pull it out. Yes, it is. One of my favorite tools is the guide foot. But there's different guide foots. This is their newest one, and you can actually attach it and move it, and that is really, really good for doing hems. Can you show how to use the Benina compensation foot? I don't have the camera in front of the Benina at the moment, but I will do a short video on that and put it up for sure. Um, I actually did use it in something, so I'll just take that video and post it up. What foot was that for the L890? It is the compensation foot. I will post it up. I will post it up. Can you get them through Warwack? I would certainly look. I wish, let's have a look. I wish that the dealers would sell needles in bulk. I would buy from the dealer if they sold them in bulk, but I have to buy from Amazon. I know a lot of dealers that sell them in bulk. So it's definitely worth asking because I know they just have them up on the stands, but it's well worth asking if they have them in bulk. So just looking through questions. I answered that question. How do you cover the hem? Okay, that's that. So I accidentally snipped one of the needle. Let me just put that. I accidentally snipped one of the needle threads at the exit end of my cover stitch. Will it hold if I cover stitch over it, or should I remove the whole thing? I would just secure it down. I would just secure it down. Um, it's certainly that's the end you want to worry about, where you come off, not where you sew on. What is the red and white piece on the window? Now you've got that's like a challenge. I don't know what's the red and white piece on the window. You mean in my workroom? I'm not sure which piece you mean. Right. I don't know if I have any more questions, but I think I've helped you. So let me just give you some clues as to where you can sometimes go wrong. You're having a problem with cover and chain stitch. So these are my best tips on that. Check the very top where your thread goes in. It can bounce out of that. Okay. It's happened. That's one thing. The other thing is check that you have the right needles. Check they're all the way up. Um, if you have skip stitches, it could be your needles, or it could be that you need to tighten your chain looper fractionally. Okay, that's another sure sign of skipped needles is when your chain loop is perhaps a little bit too loose. Uh, but other than that, I think it's fairly reliable as long as you have threaded it correctly. Can you comment on creating a chain? Can you not start sewing if you don't have a chain? You can start sewing if you don't have a chain, but you're always at the slight risk of the stitches not going into your project, it taking a couple of stitches to get going. So I always create a chain and then I stitch. Okay. That's just the way I do it. It just prevents that problem. Sometimes, if, like, for instance, when I'm teaching this class, and we actually use chain stitch to make the stems on our. I'll pull it out. Watch everything fall down. We make the stems on the section there, and we sew it just as one section. Because the other thing with chain and cover is it's not easy to stop in the middle. You really need to sew all the way on and off. Okay, so it's just easier that way. But just occasionally, I'll have somebody that comes on and their stitching doesn't take in the first few stitches. So then they have the problem that that's undone. So to bypass that, I always make a chain, a thread chain, and then I sew on. Okay, it just stops that happening. Yeah, that runner is fun. What kind of project? Let me have. So I've still got some questions coming in. Can you do a chain? Whoops, that wasn't the one I meant to put up. Can you can you do a chain on a knit for a decorative feature, say down the leg of a sweatpant? Yes, absolutely. I mean, I use it all the time as a decorative feature. It's all over my coat. Um, Yeah, I mean, that's because I love that big clunky it's actually what really got me into serging and cover stitch is that big stitch that stands up and has texture. Um, but you can put it anywhere. Have I got it in the picture? Yeah, it's just it looks like couching, but you can put it anywhere. You can run it wherever you like. Now, let me just remind you, it does not stretch. Okay, when it's just a chain, it does not stretch. I have trouble getting this. Let's put this up. I had trouble getting nice even stitches at the start of where there's bulk. Tried the hump jumper, but didn't work. Tips. Yeah, I get that. It is harder. Let me try and do it. Let me try and just cover that because I think it is a big deal. So let me put you back to the machine. So here I'm going to put my big seam here in the middle. So I'm just going to stitch over this, and I'm stitching through quite a few layers. And I'm just going to stitch. And you can certainly use a hump jumper, but you'll find the foot has just pushed my seam forward. So I'm going to lift it and I'm going to make sure it's had a chance to go back again. So I lifted my foot and then I might just do it again, lift my foot. And what that does is it just relieves the tension under the foot. And I did do a hump jump, using a hump jumper on this, and it really works, but it's not always necessary. So I've got so many seams. Let me do it a bit further up where it's not going to get mixed in with the hem stitch. So I'm coming along. I'm coming there. Oh, I've stopped. I can see that seam is getting pushed forward. Going to lift my foot, take another couple of stitches, lift my foot. I'm going to take another one just for good measure. And then I'm just going to keep going. And I think that will help you. It's really just a question of don't just drive the bus over, See, I've got nice even stitches. It's this one here. I know it's not that easy to see because I've used a print, but it is very even. So just relieve that tension. So this is another thing. When I begin in the roundel knits, the first few stitches are shorter and bunched up. Is there a fix? Yeah, I mean, you've got two choices. Be selective where you start. You don't have to start on the bulky seam, although I generally do. I quite often do. But if it gives you a problem, you might not want to. Um, but it's that lift the foot, ease the pressure, lift the foot, ease the pressure, and that should help you. Sally says you're looking forward to seeing me at Somewhere Sewing. I'm looking forward to it too. Can I do a demo of using decorative thread on the Euphoria? Yeah, I use decorative thread everywhere.